Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I have the long-awaited new Warrior T4 infographic. We're going to go through everything. It's linked below, but I'm going to explain to you here kind of why you have the abilities at a certain order and why you should have certain ISO into characters and so on and so forth, all that good stuff. I've gotten so many requests on my Discord for this infographic, so I moved it up in my list of things to do just for you guys. So let's take a look at it here. Here it is. Once again, Punk did an amazing job on this infographic, and I want to not only thank him, but let's get right to it and look at this. So I have here in the bottom left the gear priority, and I will tell you, I've used this team a lot. I've used it in war offense. I've used it in war defense. But mostly I've used it a lot in raids. I do difficulty 3 on the Doom raids, and Mystic is by far the easiest section. I use these characters alongside Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer. That is my preferred team. And the reason I have Dagger number 1 is she's very much a stat-based character. She is a character who does very, very well stat-wise. If you go to the stat tables, you know, in MSF.gg, her stats are just incredibly high, you know, tied for 9th highest damage in the game, tied for 10th highest health in the game. Just very, very high stat character. You want to keep her alive. Death pool, an argument could be made to have death pool higher on gear priority than Dagger. I think the reason that I put death pool second is that she is a little bit more beefy, so she can, if you can get away with having her at lower gear. Cloak, I think, is a character you can get away with at lower stars because he does percentage-based damage. He's more about debuffs and dodging and percentage-based damage. The problem is if your Cloak dies, you're in trouble, and he is the squishiest one of the 3. So if he doesn't dodge, you're in trouble, and that's why that actually factors into my positioning and T4s. Let's get right to the T4s. The first one on here, as you can see, is the Dagger passive, all right? And I want to go right to that here. There's some really, really good T4s. It was hard to rank them all. But what I love about this one is, to me, starting out with 3 regen for 2 turns on the full team just starts you out with a lot of healing up front. You're kind of already starting on second base, so to speak. I just think that it gives you a lot of wiggle room if you get some hits, and some of these enemies, particularly difficulty 3, hit hard. I think that really helps a lot. The resistance is nice too. I view that as a bonus, but I really like, because this is more of a raid team, and I'm focused on how they perform in raid. I've used this team a lot in raids, both in Doom 1.1 and in Doom now 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, and now we're doing daily 2.3. I think that this is just such a strong ability. It really does more for the team on the front end than the other abilities do. All right, and now let's go to the next one, and that is the Death Pool passive. And this one is like a sneaky good one. You might ask yourself, well, wait, why the Death Pool passive? Only 60% damage to the most injured enemy. But see, here's the thing. That is a very special ability. On enemy death, it attacks the most injured enemy. So this is what we call out of turn damage. And so what it essentially is, this ability kind of skips the normal rules. The normal rules of this game are that there are turns, and it's all about turn meter and about speed, and you have to wait your turn. Well, this allows you to skip your place in line, and this character is just attacking all the time, whether or not it's her turn or not. Very, very powerful, and getting all that extra damage, it just is essentially much higher effective damage than a lot of these other abilities because she's attacking a lot of times in a row. I'm sure you've seen this. There'll be an AoE from Cloak or Dagger, and then boom, Death Pool is doing it, and I think having the damage be to the most injured enemy is more valuable than having just damage to a chosen target or to a random target, because To me, it could even bypass taunt or whatever and just go right to the enemy that you want to kill most, the one that you could put the killing blow on. So I think that's particularly powerful. Now, a lot of people always say, "Oh, start with the passives first, the passives, the passives." I think once you do those two passives, before you go to Cloak's passive, the next two on the list are the ultimates for Dagger and Cloak. If you've used these abilities, they are insane. They just delete everything. Even in difficulty 3, they're very, very devastating abilities. And this upgrade here, I think Dagger is next. So I have Dagger's ultimate is number 3. And it's because she gets the piercing all the time. Cloak gets the piercing only, if she's an ally, but plus 60% piercing all enemies. If there's, let's say, 8 enemies, that's huge. That's 480% piercing. And then on top of that, you've got, if there's, let's say, 8 enemies, you're getting 50% damage per them. That would be another 400% damage. So you'd be at 880% damage against 8 enemies. You're often in raids facing a lot of enemies. This just does a ton of additional damage. Obviously, it has all the debuffs and all that, but this is such a big upgrade. And then right after the Dagger ultimate is the Cloak ultimate. And I got to tell you that I debated putting this first because it goes first. But I think they both go pretty often thanks to the ability energy from Death Bowl. You can't really go wrong with either one. The difference here is that if Dagger is dead, then this is not as powerful of an upgrade, whereas if Cloak is dead, the other one is. But they're both basically about the same super upgrade. This is another 50% damage plus another 60% piercing. Very, very powerful. And then I go right to the Cloak passive. Now, I think this is the last of the essential ones, and it just gives additional focus to the entire team, 20% additional focus, but also 10% additional dodge chance while this character has offense up. So if you look at this character and you look at this character's stats compared to the others, it's much lower. So if you go here and you look at the health, right, I showed Dagger was super high. Well, if you try to look for Cloak, he's all the way down here. He's at 42. He's much less survivable than Dagger, who's up here at 10. And so he relies a lot on dodges to survive. And so if you look here, he gets quite a bit of dodge. So in raids, so he's getting, look at this, 20% additional dodge chance. If Dagger's an ally, gets 10% additional, so 30% dodge. But then this is a big one. In raids, if the character has offense up, gain 20% additional dodge chance. Why is that important? When he is next to Dagger, Dagger puts offense up on adjacent allies, and that makes him way more survivable, particularly if you have a low-star Cloak. Let's say you're free to play, you only got a few stars on your Cloak. That's the way to do it. Run him next to Dagger, and you're going to ultimately have 30% dodge chance, but then it'll go up to 50, and that's huge because if you dodge, it's essentially 100% loss of that damage. So I think this is a very useful upgrade, and I'm calling it essential because to me, when I look at it, these to me are the abilities that you really want to have to make the team function as it's intended. The rest of these are basically making a good team much better. Now, the Dagger basic, you could argue, why a basic attack? And there's a couple reasons for that. So when you look at the Dagger basic, so first of all, obviously the 50% piercing is nice. Applying 2 regen to the 2 most injured allies herself is nice. But the reason that I am doing this one is if you go to Dagger and you look at her ISO attack, which you can't see in the game, it is actually a bleed attack. And so when she's assisting, she's applying 2 bleed. And when you put T4 on a bleed ability, it does higher damage multiplier just from having the T4 on those bleeds. It's something that's not in the game. There's no instruction book that tells you that, but that's how the game works. And she does assist quite a bit because not only, so if you look at Cloak, not only does Cloak call her to assist on his basic, but also on his special. He also calls her to assist. So she assists a lot. 2 out of his 3 abilities she assists on. So I think that's very important. I think that's very valuable. I find that she ends up assisting quite a bit, and I think those bleeds are significant. I think they are valuable and worth it. All right, next we've got the dagger special. To me, 7 through 10 here are all very close. I had a lot of trouble differentiating between them. I think they're all very good. This gives you, 60% piercing, which I love, to primary and secondary targets. Clearing all positive effects instead of 3 to a primary target. That's very situational. Chaining to an additional target is nice because it is, something where she's in raids. There's going to be a lot of targets. It's very good. It's kind of the definition to me of a nice to have T4 ability. Not essential, but definitely increases her damage output significantly. And then I have the Death Pool Ultimate. Now, I think this is one that people are going to question. Why, Philosopher, do you have this above the basic or special? I use those most often. I do think there is a way in which this depends a little bit on your gear level and how your gameplay and all that. But what I find is that I am using her. We're focusing this a raid team. I'm focusing on how they play in raids. In raids, I am trying to get the charges up on this ultimate. And this is another bleed ability. So instead of 2 bleed, I get 2 bleed for 2 turns. And then I get that higher damage multiplier, which I really love. And so to me, and 100% damage, and it's available turn 1, and it's an ability that you get every 3 turns, and she gives ability energy to herself. To me, this is an ability I use quite a bit. And it depends. Sometimes do I use special instead? Sometimes to spread a debuff? Sure. But I use this quite a bit to build up charges and these bleeds. These bleeds can erase somebody. And I think sometimes people sleep on bleeds. You see a damage number, then the bleed's there, and you think, oh, well, I didn't kill the character. But often these characters end up falling over because of the bleed. So to me, I have Death Pool Ultimate above her special and her basic. I don't feel super strongly about it. We don't need to have a big debate in the comments or Discord about it. If you feel differently, that's fine. Use the ability that you use more. I wait until I test these characters out purposely to see which abilities I use and which ones I think are more useful. This is obviously my opinion. And so that's sort of how I do it. So the special next, transferring all negative effects from this character to the primary target versus 3 is very situational to me. I do like the additional damage. So, to me, I know some people are like, I use this a lot because I love spreading negative effects. And I use it sometimes, too, to spread ability block. I'll have either it's Adam Warlock or Surfer do ability block, and she spreads it. But other than that, I'm pretty focused on getting those bleeds out and building up the charges for the alt, unless I'm stuck using the basic. So I have this one next. It's still very good because it affects 3 targets. Then you have the Death Pool Basic, and here, you are getting additional damage to the primary and secondary targets, more if they're minions. It's a good ability. It's what I use if I'm low on health sometimes because I need to heal. But I think it's the least useful, in my opinion, of her 3 abilities. I know some people have said otherwise. In my chat, they like using the basic a lot. I think it definitely depends a little bit on the size of your death pool and what you're trying to accomplish with or how you're playing it. For me, I got to tell you, my team is very high stars and red stars, and I'm just blowing through these nodes. And so I'm just all in kill mode. It's all about killing as much as possible rather than controlling. And I think if you have lower stars, maybe you may play it differently. Obviously, this is something that you should adapt to your own situation and play style. Not telling you how to play the game, not telling you what to do. I'm trying to give you my advice and explain it to you so you can make the right choice for your situation, because you're going to have a different situation than me, okay? Now, the Cloak Special is my last nice to have, and then the Cloak Special I think is nice, but, frankly, this is the least important. To me, it's not an important ability. I don't end up using it all that much, but it's nice. What I like about it is that it clears positive effects, not really its damage. So damage to one target doesn't mean as much to me. Having slow for an extra turn can be very nice, but at least at this stage of where this team is at, it's not as important. But I could see an argument for moving it up because I do think slow for 2 turns is much more important than slow for 1 turn, because if an enemy's about to have their turn and it's only slow for 1 turn, it doesn't do much, whereas a second turn means that they have 50% less turn meter gain till the whole next turn. So it's definitely something I debated in my mind. Like I said, these are all fairly close. But I find myself getting a lot of ability energy from Death Pool and then using this ultimate as much as I can, because I end up seeming like I use it every 3rd turn. That's how it feels to me. I end up just using this occasionally. That's how it works out for me. And then we've got the Cloak Basic. That is the only one that I'm not even sure I recommend it. I did it. My thought process was that Dagger sometimes will do her basic and call him as to assist, which is true, but I'm just not sure if that's really worth doing a T4. I think for me it was, in part because I have a lot of T4 materials, but I think for most players it's not. I will say that if you look at his counter assist, he doesn't have an ISO attack for which that's important. It's just a little extra damage there. So I don't think it's at all necessity. I think it's just very meh. Okay, now let's take a look at the rest of my recommendations here. In terms of ISO classes, I do, let's start with positioning. I explained earlier that the positioning I have is this one. I've got Dagger with Cloak next to her, and the reason is I like having the extra dodge on Cloak. I mean, what I find is that if my team doesn't die, unless like my team gets bad RNG and dies, then I win. Like, I'm gonna beat the node pretty easily. I one shot the boss node on 2.3 on the first try with this team. The only obviously I have a huge Dagger and Cloak and so forth, but still, it's very something I've never done. I've never one shot a boss node that easily on a new raid at the highest difficulty before without ever playing the node like that. I've never done that before. This seems so powerful. And I find that unless the only way things get screwed up is if Cloak or Dagger die early, it's usually Cloak because he's more squishy. So to me, having the extra dodge chance on him matters a lot, because if he's alive and they're just throwing out, cloaking everybody in debuffs, so to speak, you're going to win. I have these 2 guys in there because they're Mystic Heroes and they get a lot of extra stuff from the synergy with these guys. I have Death Pool in the middle because the AI seems to like to focus the middle character. She's very durable. So is Adam Warlock, but Death Pool gets a lot more attacks because of that out of turn attacking, where she's attacking when enemies are dying. So I find this to be the best setup. I have Surfer on the end because he's more squishy than Death Pool or Adam Warlock. As for ISO class, I really like having the Skirmisher Striker combo with Dagger and Cloak because they just assist a bunch. Cloak does have the assist on the special and the basic. She has it on her basic. I just think the triple tap is nice. I haven't really seen a reason to do anything else. I could see an argument for some other classes, but I don't see the reasoning for it. These characters, one thing that's unique about them is these characters are the first ones ever in the game to put vulnerable on both of their ultimates, the Cloak and Dagger ultimates. So there's a lot of vulnerables out there. You can get away without having as many skirmishers here. So essentially what I am running here is, because I have Adam Warlock as a striker and Surfer as a striker, so I'm running 4 strikers, 1 skirmisher. The only skirmisher is Cloak, and the reason that there's enough vulnerables out there is because of those ultimates. All right, guys, so check the infographics link below, but you can find it on my Discord. So if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, go to my Discord, check out all my T4 infographics, and leave me your comments and thoughts there. You can also check out my Twitch stream as well. That is linked below too.